So did you manage to successfully complete the challenge? Well, here is the way that I did it. So I'm going to start by creating the John object with the object literal syntax. And let's give it some more space down here. All right. So then the full name property will be John Smith. Then the mass is 92 kilograms. And the height is 1 meter and 95 centimeters. So 195. And then we need to calculate BMI method. So this is the trickier part, right? But it's still not really difficult. Okay, so we use a function without any argument, and that's because we're going to read the mass and the height both from the current object, right? And so how are we going to do this? Well, the formula is this dot mass, okay, divided by this dot height times this dot height. So the height squared, okay? So remember that this here means the current object. So it will read the mass from the current John object. And so the mass here will be 92. And then the same here for this dot height, and of course this here as well. So here it will be 1.95 times 1.95. And where do we want to store this result? Well, it should be in this dot BMI. So remember, we can not only read properties from the object using this, we can also set them. And so here we set this dot BMI should be result of this formula. Okay? And so that's actually it. So we calculate the BMI, and then remember that here from the text that we should also return it. So save the BMI to the object and also return it from the method. And so return this dot BMI. Okay, so that's John, and now I'm just going to go ahead and copy it for Mark, because the method is actually going to be exactly the same, obviously. Okay, so it's going to have no difference. The formula and everything works just the exact same way, and so we have the exact same method on the Mark object. Here it's Mark Miller, then the mass is just 78, and the height is 1.69. Okay, and as I mentioned, the rest stays the same. So we're now ready to calculate the BMI for both of them. So John.calc BMI, remember that's how we call methods, and then the same for Mark. Okay, and so yeah, let's take a look at these two objects actually. So console.log both John and Mark. So we want to get both of these objects here into our console. So here they are, and we see that both of them now have the BMI. So John has a 24 and Mark has a 27. So great. So you see that it's actually very nice to have a method directly attached to the object, because this function is really related to this object, to this person in this case. And so it makes sense that we can have the method really together with the data, instead of having an external function which could do these calculations as well. Okay, so that's why we make use of this pattern, let's say this best practice, to have the methods inside of the object. Now you're probably thinking that having the exact same method on these two objects kind of violates the dry principle that I showed you before, so the don't repeat yourself principle. And that's actually correct. So this is not the perfect way of doing it, but for now, with the knowledge that we have at this point, this is the best that we can do. Later in a more advanced section of the course, I'm then going to teach you how we can have the exact same method on multiple objects without having to repeat the code. But for now, this is more than okay like this, okay? So finally, we have to log to the console. So what do we want to say? Who has the highest BMI together with the full name and the respective. Don't forget they might be like a draw, so the same BMI. And so we've done this many times before. So John.BMI, let's now read it here from the object. If it's greater than Mark.BMI, well, then let's log to the console that John.first name, or actually its full name, has a higher BMI of, and then John.bmi to read it again. All right, now an else if here, because there can be the case where they both have the same, and so we have to account for that as well. So now it's Mark.bmi is larger than John.bmi. And then let's just grab this piece here of code, paste it here. This should be Mark, and this one as well. And then just the else, in case it is the same. They have the same BMI. Okay, so according to our data, Mark Miller has the highest BMI, and indeed that's exactly what we log to the console. So Mark has 27, as you can see here, and John has 24. So let's now increase John's mass here to, let's say, 110. And so now, indeed, he has the larger BMI of both. So that's already almost perfect, but we can do even better. Okay, so let's get first rid of this. And what we can do is to actually calculate the BMIs right here. So we calculate the BMIs using the call BMI function, of course, or the method, I should say, and then we use that data to take these decisions here. But keep in mind that these methods, they actually also return the BMI, right? And so we could replace John.bmi here by the method call. And so let's actually do that. So I'm gonna copy it, or actually cut it from here and paste it down here, and the same for Mark. All right, so does that make sense to you? So again, we know that this calc_bmi method here will return the BMI itself. So we have it here. So return this.bmi. And so down here, we will calculate the BMI and then immediately return it. And it will then be put here in this logical comparison, right? And the same, of course, for Mark. So in this case, this here will then be replaced with 27.3, okay, which is what we see here. And this John.calc_bmi will be 28.9, right? So this value here. And then the comparison can happen, and then everything can just work the same, okay? And so we don't need these additional lines where we first calculate the BMI and only then we read it. So we can basically calculate it and read it at the same time here, all right? And here, then we can read it already because at this point it is already calculated. And so of course, we're not going to call BMI method again. So we only want to call it once, and then from there on, we can just directly read the value from the object. So we're not going to put calc_bmi here or here, because at this point, again, it is already calculated. Okay, does that make sense to you? And of course, again, you wouldn't have to do it this way, so it's not really important. But that's actually the reason why I asked you to also return the values here from the methods, so that we can then use this little trick where we can calculate and compare the values here all in one take. All right, and just to confirm that it works the same, of course, here we go with the correct solution. Great, so we're almost at the end of the section. There's just one more thing to learn, which is loops and iteration. And so that's exactly what we're going to do in the next video. So I hope you enjoyed this one, and so see you next time.